Okay. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Ann Catherine, a birth and postpartum doula, supporting families in their unique parenting journeys. And I wholeheartedly believe that parents need a village, which is why I am delighted to be talking today with Sarah Picken, who is a therapist and a healer specializing in birth trauma. She is the creator and founder of Sacred Healing, which supports families through the childbearing years, offering holistic healing packages in person or online to help you on your journey of healing from a difficult birth experience. Also supporting you in your journey around infertility, conscious conception, and pregnancy loss. Sacred healing modalities focus on mind, body, and spirit using a combination of energy healing, sound therapy, crystal therapy, yoga, and the more traditional talk therapy. So Sarah has 20 years of experience in the social services field and holds a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. She combines this more mainstream training with her energy healing training, which includes Reiki, angelic realm practitioner, and theta healer in her work. And Sarah's also a wife and a mom to two amazing little souls, and a wife to an incredible partner. And I love this, a student for life. Thanks so much, Sarah, for chatting with me today. Oh, and I can't hear you. Hold on. Can you say hi again? Oh, now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So can you just tell us a little bit about your journey in becoming a healer in this, the birth world?
Sure. Well, I was going through, it's kind of a long story, so I'll kind of try to shorten it up. But when I started doing my master's in marriage and family therapy, I was doing a lot of specialized work in trauma, and I had gone through sort of my own healing journey with previous traumas. And when it came time to birth my son, I ended up getting launched in this whole new direction of birth trauma. I had done everything possible that I thought I could do to prepare to actually avoid birth trauma. But when it actually came down to it, I ended up having a very, very traumatic birth. And after that birth experience, I looked around for support and realized there wasn't very much. Like in Canada, there was nobody. There was nobody at all offering services. And so given my past with healing from other traumas and then sort of my training, I realized like this is a field that is like really, really missing support. And so I wanted to create something to support women and families and their not just women, but also their partners and babies who are coming into this world traumatized. And it really sort of, the holistic piece of it kind of came in because when I was working through, years and years and years of my own previous traumas, I went for, 12 straight years of talk therapy. And it just wasn't doing it for me. Like I would take these tiny little steps forward and cognitively I understood what had happened wasn't okay and all of that kind of stuff. But the trauma still lived in my body and I wasn't healing. And so that's kind of where this idea came from. Like healing needs to be an integrated experience of your mind, body, and spirit. Like it doesn't just happen to our head, right? And so sort of on my healing journey, what ended up happening is I did all these years of therapy and then I went for an energy healing session. And in that energy healing session, it was like magic. It was like I walked in with full blown PTSD, flashbacks every 5 seconds. Like I was just having a really, really hard time functioning. And I walked back out of that session. It was an hour session and all of my memories of my traumas had gone to black and white memories. Like it was just remarkable. So I was like, whoa, this is so wild. And this is that missing piece that in mainstream therapy we're missing. Like we're not covering that. And that's not something, that I was even taught in my master's program. Like it's something that we're really, really missing. And so, when this traumatic birth happened to me, I realized like this is something that needs to be created for women and their families, and we need to be able to like educate people that it isn't just about talking. Like talking isn't enough to actually heal therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So heal trauma. So that's kind of where how I kind of got started in all of this.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So when you say energy healing or energy therapy, was what was the therapy, the specific one that you did that was so powerful?
It was actually theta healing. And
Okay.
so theta healing is something, so like now when I practice, so I'm trained in theta healing, but now when I practice, I've evolved quite a bit. And so it's more intuitive, like it's not following one specific sort of training anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's whoever comes in front of me, wherever they're at, I just sort of connect to this divine guidance of what is it that we need to do and where do we need to go. Like, you know, I've trained in a million other things recently, and past life regression and hypnotherapy and all of these other things. And they're all really, really helpful, but it's sort of like that unique combination of all of those different modalities um, that I kind of use for each individual person, just depending on where they're at.
Mm-hmm. So you touch people. They're like lying down, and you use physical touch.
Yeah, well, it depends on the client. So if you're online, obviously, I'm not going to be using any physical touch. Then we do sort of an energy healing session that is done by distance. And so I still ask clients to like lie down, find a quiet space, like don't just continue on your phone and do the normal things you would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So really tap into and feel that the energy shifting and moving. And so we're staying connected through the whole session while I'm actually working on them. But for people that come into sessions, into my actual office, yeah, you typically lie down on a massage table, and it's just gentle, intuitive touch of sort of where your body is telling me the trauma energy is stored. And that's sort of where my hands will go, and we're sort of like releasing and letting that trauma energy release from those areas. But it's also a combination of meditation and there is talk therapy as well. Like there is that cognitive processing piece, because some people really still need that by the like at the point where they come in, like they just need to be heard and they need to be validated, and then the body work we kind of integrate that in after that piece is done for them. So it's a little bit different for everybody. But yeah, that's how the body work piece typically looks. Is it's like
Mm-hmm.
go into this beautiful deep meditation. I'm intuitively placing hands. We use crystals on your body in different spots. I play the crystal bowls, which helps to like really release the energy of the trauma that's been held in your body, because it just starts to help all of your cells vibrate at a higher level. And that trauma energy is dense energy, and so it can't exist. Like it has to start breaking up and releasing as we're raising the vibration within the room. So it's kind of just a beautiful, gentle way of
Mm-hmm.
helping things to just move through, process and move through.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. It's Yeah, I can just imagine the trauma like exiting, that energy exiting the body with this therapy that you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Like we don't I always like explain to people that, you know, we still have this primal system that like back, you know, at the beginning of time, when you think of like animals and their nervous systems, right? If a lion catches a gazelle, the gazelle plays dead, right? They go into that freeze mode,
mhm.
and with the hopes that that lion's going to like run away and go get his family and come back to eat him later. And so if all goes well and the lion actually leaves, the gazelle jumps up and shakes, right? They shake their body, they shake off the trauma of that experience, and then they just run away. They never ever think about that experience again. They don't go to their family and like, whoa, I'm gonna need therapy like that lion just
Yeah.
they're not holding that traumatic energy anymore. But as humans, we hold that traumatic energy. We're very busy and we don't take the time to process and to release and to shake and to, you know, to
Mm.
really, really let that energy move through our system and out. So we end up holding that energy in our body. So, being able to do, like, another piece of it is, I incorporate yoga into our healing sessions, and qigong. Qigong is like amazing and simple and something everyone can do at home. And one of the simplest qigong things is like literally just shaking, like shaking your whole body. It's like a total lunatic, but you just do it. You just shake and smile, and like every piece of your body. And it's a way that you can like move the trauma out of your system. So yeah, that's just kind of an important piece to remember, that people often don't. As soon as something scary happens or traumatic event happens, we typically suppress and just try to move forward, especially as new moms, right? Because we're so busy and we want to just be focusing on our baby and
Yeah.
working on physical recovery. And we don't understand that there's some simple things that we can do, even as a new mom, to kind of help process and release as we're going through that postpartum period, and emotionally healing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that postpartum period when you have zero time. I'm starting to see now why birth trauma is stuck because you really are attuned to only your baby's needs in that time. Well, so I'm curious about pregnant women who might be watching this and wondering how they could, what they can do to prepare or to avoid a traumatic birth. What would you say to them?
Well, the very first, most important piece in preparing is learning how to reconnect to your intuition. That is like the number one thing. It's vital, because throughout your pregnancy, your labor, your birth, your postpartum, all of it, you need to be able to tap into your own inner wisdom. And, in this day and age, birthing has become such a medical event that we're often told that our intuition doesn't matter, right? The medical staff knows better than us. And sort of our wishes are overrode a lot of the time. And so learning how to like reconnect back to that inner wisdom is just a big, big deal. And the way that I teach that is like the simplest thing is to really just start by, you could pick out 2 pairs of clothes. You could pick out some like super like tight clothes and some super high spiky heels or something that's just not super comfortable. And then pick out like your most comfortable outfit, like a yoga outfit or whatever, and just look at your uncomfortable outfit. Close your eyes. Notice what it feels like to do up those really tight jeans and put on those shoes that hurt your feet, and just notice what happens in your body. Just tap into that sort of inner wisdom of what that feels like for you. And then notice where it is, notice what the sensation is, and then switch over to your comfy clothes and just notice what that feels like to pull on those pants that are so comfy and worn through and whatever, right? And notice what that feels and where you feel that in your body, and use like little tiny things like that to sort of start gauging and listening to your body about what you need and what feels good and what doesn't feel good. And then you can take that a step further. So, every intervention or every sort of thing that you're going to go through in pregnancy or conception, really just sitting with it first. Like if your doctor calls and says, "Okay, it's time for, this test," sit with it. How does it feel in your body? Does it feel good? Does it feel light and flowy and like exciting and you're ready? Or is there some dark denseness to that? And if there is, sit with that and just figure out, you can just ask that feeling, like, what is this about? What messages do you have for me? Get very clear on, what you're in alignment with throughout your pregnancy, so that you go into your birth feeling empowered. Like you can tap into that inner wisdom every step of the way. And if something isn't feeling right, you can say like, this doesn't feel right. Like, don't consent to this, or whatever the case, right? Because you have that understanding of what your inner wisdom is telling you. And another piece of that is just learning how to connect to your baby as well throughout pregnancy, so that you're having that understanding that this isn't just your wisdom either, that you're tapping into, you can tap into your baby's wisdom as well. So that's something that I love to like do in sessions of, like we go into a meditative state and like, let's just connect with your baby. Where do you feel your baby? Inside your body, outside your body? What does that energy look like? And what does that feel like? Do you hear any messages? And typically women who come in are like, yeah, that's crazy. Like, I can't do that. I can't talk to my baby. Or I'm not gonna be able to hear my baby or see my baby. But then the stuff that comes through, like almost every single time, people just like burst into tears because they're like, oh, I just heard like I need to trust, or I just heard that he loves me, and it's a he, and it's like all
Oh,
the
wow.
wild things come through because we all have this ability to connect. It's like our baby is energy, right? And so of course we can connect.
Mm-hmm.
So going into your birth, having that connection with your own inner wisdom and your baby's wisdom. A short little story: before I birthed my second baby, I was at 42 weeks and 4 days, and
Mm-hmm.
with my first, I was at 42 weeks and 3 days when he was born. So I was accepting, like, I wasn't worried about that part of it, but I felt so ready. Like, I'd worked through all of my trauma. I had like the proper people with me that I really wanted, and I really, really felt prepared. So I was like, what is going on? Like, I mean, and I actually got to the point at one point where I was like, not in trust. And I'm like, okay, Googling, like, has anyone ever been pregnant forever? Like, am I going to be the first one? And so I just had this message, like, just go meditate with your baby and just ask her what she needs. And so I climbed into the bath at like 11:30. I did a meditation. I just connected with her, and it'll sound kind of wild to people that aren't into all the alternative stuff, but I had this like remembrance of a past life where we had birthed and we didn't survive it. And so she had fear around that. And so we cleared that fear, and it was really just reminding her that this was a completely different experience and this was going to be like brand new for us. And she was totally safe and supported, and so was I. And like, no joke, I got out of the bathtub at like 5 to 12, and at midnight my contraction started, and boom, I just went into labor, and that was the end of it. Like, it was just this beautiful example of like connecting to our wisdom and our baby's wisdom, because sometimes it's going to be our anxiety, our fears, our stuff coming up, and sometimes it's going to be our baby who just has messages for us that need to be heard before we go into the process. So that's the number one for sure. How to prepare. And I think the other ones that are kind of huge, or that are for sure huge, is just really empowering yourself with as much knowledge as possible. Like, read. Like, I've got a huge stack of books here actually that I always recommend, but Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering by Sarah Buckley. Oh my gosh. So good. Like, she's a doctor, but she talks about every single intervention, and what the evidence is behind it, and the pros and cons behind it, so that you can really make empowered choices every step of the way, and really understand, like, is this necessary or is this not necessary, and is this one I can pass on, or is this one that feels really important to me? And so you can have that really good information. Yeah, there's tons and tons of good books that, like, In a May's Guide to Childbirth, Calm Birth, Hypnobirthing is also incredible. There's a lot of information around just the process of birth, but also just how to get yourself into that positive mindset of trusting and connecting back to your inner wisdom. Because as women, we have this inner wisdom about how to birth, but we forget that because it's been taken away from us in a lot of ways. And so it's kind of like teaching you how to connect back to that. Sacred Birthing by Sunny Carl is incredible. It's a very spiritual sort of out there book for many, but there's a lot of really good information. So,
Okay, I'll put all of those names and
yeah,
in the comments, underneath.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's lots and lots of different books, but just really, really surrounding yourself with the best information you can find to really empower yourself, so that as you're going in, if you're having a hospital birth, or even if you're having a home birth with a midwife, and they say, okay, I want to do this intervention now because it's been this period of time, you're going to have that information and that education to know if it's necessary. And so you can combine that with your own inner knowing, your own intuition around, do I need this at this time? Yeah, it's been this long, but I also know that, my body needs a break right now. And so I haven't stalled out. My body's just resting, and that's okay. And you can be in a place of trust rather than a place of fear, which is where, often medical providers are, because they have liability issues and they're responsible for your life and your baby's life. And so they have a lot of red tape and a lot of restrictions on the way that they work. Mm-hmm. And when you're in a hospital setting in particular, they're used to dealing with emergencies. Like, they look at everything as an emergency. That's the system that they are, and that's what they're set up for. Mm-hmm. And so it's a completely different mind shift for them to look at something that's coming into the hospital as a natural event that they can step back from. They're not trained to step back. They're trained to step in mm-hmm. and take over. And that can be a beautiful and helpful thing too in many situations. But for a normal, healthy pregnancy, it's not necessarily required or ever really required. So those are kind of the big ones. And also just surrounding yourself with support people that you trust. So like a doula, of course, like everybody talks about how having a doula, if it was I don't even remember who it was that said this recently, but if a doula was a drug, like it would be like mandatory and prescribed, right? Like it's so important to have empowered people around you who trust birth. Like, you want to surround yourself in these people that trust and that are going to protect you and advocate for you, because when you're in, the throes of labor, it's not the best time for you to have to be fighting for your rights, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to have those support people around you. And if your partner's with you, you want a support person for your partner, because your partner may have unresolved things or fears of his own or her own, right? And so having a support person for them too, so that their energy is not affecting your energy if they're starting to freak out or worry or whatever, because every single person in that birthing space is an intervention. Every single person that is there, their energy affects the birthing woman's energy. And so you want those people around you to be as steady and as stable and as trusting and as knowledgeable as they can be about the natural process of birth. So yeah, I think those are kind of
great advice. Yeah, so have the right people that you feel comfortable with, that trust birth, have the right information, and to be connected to your intuition. Yeah. Definitely. When I gave birth to my second, Stephen, I felt very connected to him. And when I was giving birth, there was a bit of hubbub around us about people kind of running around and worrying. And I just could feel him saying, "I'm fine. It's gonna be fine, people. Just calm down." Yeah, that's good. That's really good to be able to feel that trust. Definitely. And so I know that even if you prepare, if you do all of these things, I mean, life is just life, and stuff happens. And if you have a birth that does not go the way you want it to go, maybe there are people out there who have, like me, I was one of these people. I wasn't sure if what I was feeling was normal. Like, okay, I just had birth. It's normal to feel like a little bit sad that it didn't go the way I wanted. When does it cross over to being that someone is traumatized? How do you know that you need help?
So with trauma, it's so subjective. There's everybody experiences trauma in a completely different way, and what could be traumatic to one person might not be traumatic to another.
Yeah.
So I always explain that our nervous system is like a cup, and every experience that we go through takes up space in that cup. And so if we go into our birth experience and our cup is already full, our nervous system is already full of traumatic events and hard events and sad events that we haven't processed and healed from, then we go into birth a lot more susceptible to trauma. And so what we want to do is we really want to be clearing any of this stuff before pregnancy, through pregnancy, even during labor if we need to, whatever fears are sort of coming up, we want to be clearing that. But on the other side of that, if you already have had a traumatic birth and it isn't like you're not feeling well, sort of the diagnostic criteria is that you're having symptoms, like a certain number of symptoms from different categories for over a month before you're diagnosed with PTSD. But some of sort of the common symptoms are avoidance, so not wanting to think about your birth at all, not wanting to go back for your with your doctor, not wanting to ever see the hospital again, not even be able to drive past it or birth center or wherever it happened. Hypervigilance, so every time something drops, you're screaming and jumping and just really super on guard, and every little thing is startling you, so like that really excitable sort of startle reflex. If you're having flashbacks, that's a sign that there's definitely some trauma that has become stuck in your body. So flashbacks are just you're just out doing whatever you're doing, and all of a sudden you're back in it, like you're in a memory and it's happening, but it doesn't feel like a memory, like you're reliving what happened at your again, and it feels like you don't have control over it. And these things, they just keep replaying and replaying because that trauma response hasn't been healed, and so our brain takes us back to it and just keeps replaying it in the hopes to finish the response so that it can let it go. So when you get to that point where you're having flashbacks, it's a really good sign that it's time to go see a mental health professional, and not necessarily a doctor, because that's not what they're trained in. Like, they're trained in the physical body, and so a lot of women go to their birth provider, and it's not something, and they often end up getting diagnosed with anxiety or other things, and the PTSD is often missed, because this is a field where people are just starting to learn how big an impact this is having, and where women are just really starting to stand up and say, like, this is okay, right? Because to have a birth that has some trauma in it is actually very, very, very common. And so a lot of women, like, I think the stats right now are like 1 in 4 women report they have a traumatic birth. That's just reported instances, right? And
that's North America.
Yeah. Yeah, and most women don't even know that they've had a traumatic birth because it's just so common to think that it's going to be traumatic, right? That it has to be. It's going to be painful. You're going to scream. It's going to be like what you see in the movies. Doctors are going to do whatever they can to, save your baby, and that's just how birth goes. And so a lot of women have this deep sinking sense of like, I'm just not okay, and that felt awful, but I don't even want to speak up because that's just what birth is. And so I'm just being I'm being a baby, or I'm just, like, there's all of those feelings and of shame, like, well, everybody else births and it's horrible for everybody, so why am I so weak that I'm feeling all these emotions? And so there's so many different layers to it, but what I always say is that it's just, if you're feeling anything, like any feelings or emotions around how your birth experience went, and it doesn't feel like it was a positive experience for you, even if there's just bits and pieces that were really challenging, like, that's valid and that really counts, and that's really important to process and release that, because if we don't process and release that, it ends up becoming entrenched in our body as trauma, right? And so symptoms can show up years and years later. So as you're going through the postpartum period, like, processing and releasing, and if you're not able to see a therapist, like, doing your own work of just journaling, like, every time something comes up, journal and cry and just let it out and free flow, write and rip it up and burn it up, and do whatever you need to do. For some people, then always try to incorporate movement, movement to keep that. So, like, do a little bit of really, really gentle yoga, because your body will be fresh from having your baby, or gentle qigong to sort of like move the energy through you, and as you're sort of processing. But so it's really different for everybody what the kind of symptoms may look like. But if you're feeling anything that, like, if it's just not feeling good for you, then that deserves attention. Valid. And, you know, a lot of people really like having that diagnosis of PTSD if that's how far it's gone for you. And for others, it doesn't really matter. Like, from my perspective, the label of it doesn't really matter. It's your quality of life that matters. If you're struggling, then you deserve support and healing. And there's something there that's coming up, right? And so the diagnosis itself can be very helpful to help make sense of, you know, everything that you're going through. So for some women, when they come through and they have PTSD, they just think they're going crazy, you know, because they have no understanding of why. Like, why am I screaming all the time? Why can I not sleep? Why am I having nightmares? Why do I like drive somewhere and then I get to some place and I don't even remember how I got there? Like, you start to think that you're going crazy, right? And you can't, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes that label of PTSD can be super helpful, because then you're like, whoa, PTSD means boom, 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 boom. That's everything I'm going through. And then you have something that you sort of working, like, you know, like you're working towards healing that. It's not just that you're crazy in all these different areas of your life, because that's sometimes how it feels. It's how it felt for me when I had PTSD. I just thought I was a lunatic. Like, the towel would drop in the bathroom and it would just be like this silent drop, and I would scream. Like, I was so scared. Or, you know, I'd hear a door open and I would scream, and it was just like, what is happening to me? Like, I'm clearly losing my mind. One day in my program, in my master's program, at the very, very beginning, like 10 years ago, I went through the diagnostic criteria for a class, and I was like, whoa, this is me. Like, makes sense of every crazy experience I've been having, and how, you know, how out of control I've been feeling. It's all because, you know, it's all combined together to make this diagnosis. And now at least I know what I'm dealing with and I can heal it. So it was really helpful. For some women, it's just a label and it doesn't matter. So wherever you're kind of at with that.
Yeah, I love how you just said, if you are not feeling right, then you deserve support. Yeah. The labels don't have to matter so much if you are in your quality of life. How you said, it's the quality of life that matters. Yeah. And I think that some women maybe don't think that their birth could possibly be traumatic, because maybe everyone was so nice, and maybe all of the people who were doing their job, and they were doing their job well. And I think that women's voices can maybe not be heard in really nice ways. And so it hurts, but you can't put your finger on why, because everyone's got a smile on their face. Yeah. So let's see. What would you say? I'm a doula. What would you say to birth workers like me for going into a birth and holding that sacred space for women? Do you have any advice for me?
Well, like I kind of mentioned before, like, everyone in the room is an intervention in themselves, right? And so one of the most important things is to be sure that you're going in with a clear energy field. There's this incredible book, Mothering from Your Center, and she talks about, and so I've been utilizing sort of my own take on one of her practices, but she talks about how we clear our birth field using birth energy medicine, and how important that is for mothers to use for themselves, but also for birth workers. Because as a doula, as any sort of a birth provider, you want to be in that space of trust. And as your client is, you know, going through the highs and lows of their birth, you want to be able to stay there, because their nervous system is mirroring yours, right? And so incredibly important that if you had a traumatic birth, or you were born in a traumatic way, or your mom was born in a traumatic way, to understand the impact of that. Like, that is passed down through the generations. And so we want to be able to be just very aware of that, so that we can clear that. And it's, in an ideal world, we'd all just clear it all and we'd be just floating around.
Yeah, with a button.
And we just are in this happy little bubble supporting birth all the time. And realistically, that's not where we're all at, and that's okay. But if we're aware of what is ours and what is the client's, we can separate that while we're supporting birth and healing.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
If something comes up, you can check into it. You're going to use your intuition again. Like, is this something? Is this mine, or is it something I should be worried for her? And if
Mm-hmm.
it's yours, you can gently say, "Thank you for the reminder. I'll come back to this, and I will work on you. I promise." And you just step aside for now, and then
Yeah.
you just get back into that beautiful zone of trusting and supporting, so that you're really, really differentiating and being very, very aware of what's happening in the room, and not putting your stuff on your client.
Yeah. It's so important. We did a lot of my doula training was actually a lot of this clearing work.
Okay.
So I learned a lot about stuff that was there that I didn't know was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and being a clean slate for your client. It's so important.
Yeah. Because
Mm-hmm.
we just don't and for the most part, it's not really sort of a mainstream knowledge or even belief that, birth trauma is passed down through the generations, right? And when you look at how our mother's birth and our grandmother's birth, being completely knocked out and unconscious and all of those different things, right? Like those sorts of things are passed down to us. We have that within our own genetic makeup, and that stuff can be triggered without us even knowing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened. I think, I'm certain that's what happened for my first birth. I was born by emergency C-section. And although I thought I cleared everything around it, not all of the oxytocin receptors in my body were triggered because of the way that I was born. And so my birth ended up being this long, 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 long ordeal. And I had no way of knowing that. Like, there was just no way I could have predicted that. I had thought I had done all the birth clearing and all of the stuff, but there was these other layers that sort of came up. And so just
Yeah.
being as self-aware as you possibly
And
can.
asking your mom, how was I born? How did it go? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Mm-hmm.
big, big question. That's one of the things that I always say, like within my program, like ask your mom, ask your grandma if she's still around, and just get that sense of, what kind of happened. And then energetically, we can do that in meditation too. Like we can go back through time and, release that trauma that, the generations before you held as well. And also the beauty of it is tap back into the wisdom of the generations from way back, who were birthing
Yeah.
naturally,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, powerfully, right? Like tapping back into that energy and like, let's pull that forward. Let's release all of the trauma that's happened in the last however many years that this became such a medicalized event, and go back
Mm-hmm.
to that beautiful, empowered, strong birth where it was all about your inner wisdom.
Yeah. Um, well, um, do you have any other little nuggets of knowledge that you'd like to share with people before we say goodbye? This has been so fascinating for me, and I'm really, the mind and the body connection, that's really what has that's most fascinating to me. The gazelle shaking. Now I'm going to watch National Geographic in a completely different way because I'm going to look for the shaking, and I'm going to try and shake more myself.
Yeah, and even just in like your day-to-day life, right? Like, you go through something that's intense, you have a fight with your partner or your friend, or your kid has like a blowout tantrum on you, and just shake it off. Like do some
Yeah.
qigong. Have you ever done qigong?
No, I haven't.
It's so good. I'll send you a video.
Okay.
There's this awesome, it's literally just shaking. It's just shaking your body and smiling at the same time, because that smiling releases all of the tension from it, and the releases the energy. So yeah, in our house we do a lot of shaking every time there's a blow up over whatever.
That's a great parenting tool too. Also a little bit of dancing. I would put on some music. Okay, we just had an intense moment. Let's dance. I love it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with my 5-year-old, that's a big piece of what we do after he's had a really emotional, tantrum, or he's just really trying to settle after something's been really frustrating for him. Like, let's shake. And we turn on the music and we dance and we just act like we just let it out so that he doesn't have to carry it. Because the kids carry stuff, they carry frustrations, and they can get stuck in their emotions the same as we do as adults.
Yeah.
Just let this go and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. The only other thing that, I mean, there's a million other things I could share, but as
Oh,
far as
share one more thing.
birth workers, just one more thing to kind of think about is to create your own ritual of how do you prepare going into birth and how do
Mm,
you disengage after birth. Like, you know, as a therapist, for me, I come in and I play my bowls and I sort of like ask for divine guidance of whatever needs to come through me for each individual client. And then afterwards, I spray my energy spray that sort of like clears the energy, release from that client so that I'm clear and I'm back into my own space and I'm not carrying any of their stuff. For everybody, it looks different of what they do, but like coming up with some sort of a beautiful ritual for yourself as well, so that you're not carrying the weight of all of the different experiences you've been through. You can take the beauty and stuff with them, but we get very energetically connected to our clients, and so being able to come back into our own sort of energetic field and our own space that we can let them go back to their space
hmm
is a really important piece of any of this sort of work with working so intensely and intimately with people.
Yeah, and I've also found that I've wanted to this. I've used the word clean slate before, and I think I maybe took that too much to the extreme. Like I was going into every client visit thinking, okay, feel nothing, be completely open. But every client touches me and moves something in me in a different way and brings things up and memories, and so I also want to learn how um, to welcome those feelings too, because we're always evolving and on this journey of figuring stuff out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's a really important piece of it. It's like, when you're there being all in, but taking those notes of like, whoa, this just came up. Okay, is this theirs or mine? Oh, it's mine. Cool. So, afterwards in your closing ritual, after you see your clients, like, okay, let's write down all these things that need my attention, right? And maybe you give them your attention right then if you can. I mean, that's what I'm learning is really important, because when you're doing this kind of work, you end up having like piles and piles of things. You're like, oh, that's mine. Better put it in this pile to deal with later, right? And then you go to the next time, you're like, oh, that's mine. And then you end up having this huge
Oh,
pile.
I've got lots of stuff.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then it gets overwhelming because you're like, oh, it's a massive pile. But if you can take just even a few moments after each session, with your client in the car or whatever, after a birth, um, what came up for me? What messages do you have for me? What needs to
Mhm.
release right now? Like what was just triggered, and whatever sort of ritual you need to do around that in the moment, just giving it those few moments before you move forward,
Mhm.
super, super helpful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
that's
there,
great advice. Also, I think also with my kids to do that, because that's like trigger every 5 minutes that somebody's triggered about something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, totally.
hmm Well, thank you so much. And do you want to tell people where they can get in touch with you?
Oh, sure. So my website is sacredhealing.org. And I also run, there's a million different services on there for different things that we do or different things that I offer. But I also have a birth trauma support group on Facebook. And so that is called Share, Heal, Grow. And all of the links for it are on my website from underneath services. So if you're interested in that, it's a group for women to just really deeply connect and share their experiences. I send a private message first with some intake to just kind of check in to see where you're at, because if somebody is sort of in the crisis stage still right after birth and they're having a lot of experiences of flashbacks or nightmares or all those sorts of things, I don't recommend being in that sort of a space yet, just because my priority is always about safety. So I want this group to feel very safe, and I don't want there to be any further damage done. So when you're sort of in that crisis stage, it's really important to surround yourself with all things positive. You don't want to compound it by hearing more trauma and more trauma and more trauma and more trauma. At that stage, it's really just about like deep self-care and getting the supports in place that you need to sort of find your way out of that space. But yeah, that group is available as well. So sacredhealing.org, you can see everything on there. And yeah.
Great. So that's going to be so helpful to so many people. I know it already is. Okay, have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Let's see.